If you don't already know, this is Sacheen Littlefeather. Her claim to fame comes from the 45th Academy Awards in 1973, where Marlon Brando won the Best Actor award for his role in The Godfather, and she went in his place, and this was the speech that she gave.
The winner is Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Accepting the award for Marlon Brando and The Godfather, Miss Sacheen Littlefeather.
Hello, my name is Sacheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, and on television in movie reruns, and also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee. I beg at this time that I have not intruded upon this evening, and that we will, in the future, our hearts and our understandings will meet with love and generosity. Thank you on behalf of Marlon Brando.
Now we're going to get into the reasons of why I'm bringing her up in the first place, but before we do that, a word from today's video sponsor, Moomoo. Moomoo is a stock trading financial platform that allows you to buy and sell stocks. They have some of the best analytical tools available on their mobile app, and unlike many other apps, they include free level 2 trading data. Moomoo is currently offering up to 15 free stocks with qualifying deposit. So obviously with a deposit, that's your money. You get to keep that money. But on top of that, you get 15 free stocks. Buying stocks on the platform is extremely simple. As I've shown before, here's an example of buying Desktop Metal stock. We put in the numbers of shares that we want to buy. We submit our order, confirm it, and bada bing, bada boom. There we go. The order is filled. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for Moomoo today using the link in the description box down below, as well as the pinned comment, where you can get up to 15 free stocks with qualifying deposit. And now back to the video. So earlier this month, Sacheen Littlefeather passed away. As we can see from this New York Times article, Sacheen Littlefeather, activist who rejected Brando's Oscar, dies at 75. And if we scroll down, we can see her death came just weeks after the Academy apologized to Miss Littlefeather for her treatment during the Oscars. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter in August, she said she was stunned by the apology. So after many decades, the Academy decided to apologize to Sacheen Littlefeather. Now, over the years, a lot of stories have been associated with this event. There was a lot of reactions at the time and since. For example, almost immediately after she made her speech there at the Oscars, one of the actors that came up after her was Clint Eastwood, and he had this to say.
I don't know if I should present this award on behalf of all the cowboys shot in all the John Ford westerns over the years.
So that was pretty funny from Clint Eastwood. Also growing out of this incident is this story about John Wayne and his reaction to the speech. You see this story all over the place whenever it comes to the Academy Awards. People spread this as if it's fact, as if it's gospel. And the story is basically that John Wayne, upon hearing this, went into a fit of rage, and that it took 6 security guards to hold him back from physically assaulting Sacheen Littlefeather. Here you can actually see an elderly Sacheen Littlefeather a few months before she passed away talking about the incident.
I also want to mention that at the Academy Awards that night, when I was up on that stage, there was a major commotion backstage that was caused by John Wayne, the actor. He did not like what I was saying up at the podium. So he came forth in a rage to physically assault and take me off the stage. And he had to be restrained by 6 security men in order for that not to happen. And that perhaps was going to be the most violent act that had ever occurred at the Academy Awards itself. So therefore, by the grace of God, go I. The angels and my ancestors were really looking after me. And he was pulled back from going after me, and he did not assault me because of those 6 security men.
Were you aware that was happening while you were on stage?
I heard a commotion backstage, yes. But I handled it very calmly.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Incredibly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people don't realize what my experience was. They had absolutely no idea, none, of what my experience was, what I went through as a result of. Naivete, total ignorance. And now I'm here to tell my story the way that it was, from my point of view, from my experience.
Now, frankly, I kind of like the idea of a John Wayne being like, let me go, let me at her, you know, for the comments that she made that he felt it was disrespecting America or something like that. That sounds kind of cool. That sounds kind of badass. Obviously, that's not the perspective of the person telling the story. They're telling this story in a sense to denigrate him in order to make him out to seem like a violent, hateful lunatic. And unfortunately, this story is most likely untrue. As you can see from this Los Angeles Times article, did John Wayne try to assault Sacheen Littlefeather at the 1973 Oscars? Debunking a Hollywood myth, from Michael Hiltzik. So in the article, he cites the individual Farron Nemi, who is a cineast and film historian. She says, once again, we're flooded with the tale of John Wayne and the 6 security men, the lousy variety act many people believe played the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion back in 1973. Her conclusion after considerable reporting and research is, never happened.
It's a made-up tale. It's a total fabrication. It never happened.
Now, apparently the story began as an exaggerated yarn that Oscar telecast director Marty Pacetta started telling interviewers a year or so after the fact that got more exciting each time it was told until it became a persistent urban legend. Nemi starts her inquiry by noting the evolution of Pacetta's own story. In 1974, he told an interviewer that on hearing Littlefeather speak, John Wayne is backstage and he's in an uproar and I had to calm him down. In 1984, he told another interviewer, John Wayne was in the wings and was so angry he wanted to go and pull her off stage. The 6 security men, a suspiciously precise number, Nemi observes, first make their appearance in 1988 when he told a third interviewer, we had a fight is what we had. John Wayne wanted to go out there and physically yank her off the stage. It took 6 men to hold him back. It's then noted that there's the circumstantial evidence that the amount of time it would have taken from when the speech started to when the so-called offensive remarks were made. As Nemi observes, that would suggest that in the span of 45 seconds, John Wayne heard her words, decided that they were infuriating, got up to mount an attack, and drew the resistance of 6 security guards. Not to mention that 9 years earlier, Wayne had undergone lung cancer surgery in which 2 of his ribs and part of his left lung were removed. And by the end of the Oscars, he invited all the winners to come out to a mass rendition of You Oughta Be in Pictures, and he's noticeably gasping for breath. It's also worth noting Wayne never criticized Littlefeather personally. His general comment when asked about Brando's refusal is that the actor should have come out and done it in person. So they kept changing the story, and they added this 6 security guard had to hold him back from physically assaulting her. These allegations only came out after John Wayne died, so of course he couldn't refute any of it. It's almost certainly nonsense. And as you could see from Littlefeather herself, she didn't actually witness this with her own eyes. She heard about it from other people, probably the guy who told the story, and she's believing it. She claims she heard a commotion backstage. But that is not why we're here today. You see, Sacheen Littlefeather, who was presented as a Native American who claimed Native American ancestry, dressed like one when she did this stunt at the Oscars. It turns out she's not actually Native American. As you could see this article in the San Francisco Chronicle, Sacheen Littlefeather was a Native American icon. Her sisters say she was an ethnic fraud. The Apache actress and activist wasn't Native American, say her sisters, and that wasn't the only thing she lied about. And if we scroll down, we can see this article is by Jacqueline Keeler, written October 22nd, 2022. And we can see Littlefeather's sisters both said in separate interviews that they have no known Native American/American Indian ancestry. They identified as Spanish on their father's side and insisted their family had no claims to a tribal identity. The author of the article states, "My review of her father's side of the family tree, where she claimed her native heritage, found no documented ties between his extended family and any extant Native American nations in the United States. I did, however, find family records in Mexico going back to 1850. Marriage and baptismal records do not place the Cruz or Ibarra families near White Mountain Apache territory in Arizona." This is the tribe she claimed to be a part of. "And they weren't near Yaqui communities in Mexico either. This is a tribe she claimed to be a part of much later in her life. Instead, the Cruz line goes to a village that is now part of Mexico City. Mexican Catholic baptismal records and U.S. military registration cards from World War I and World War II of the Ibarra men, their grandmother's brothers, place distant family in Pima/O'odham, formerly Papago, tribal territory in Sonora, Mexico. However, Brian Haley, a scholar of California and Sonoran tribes, told me that these are communities where tribal members would have been a distinct minority. All of the family's cousins, great aunts, uncles, and grandparents going back to about 1880, when their direct ancestors crossed the border from Mexico, identified as white, Caucasian, and Mexican on key legal documents in the United States. None of their relatives married anyone who identified as Native American or American Indian. All of their spouses also identified as either white, Caucasian, or Mexican. White Apache tribal officials I spoke with told me they found no record of either Littlefeather or her family members, living or dead, being enrolled in the White Mountain Apache. The sisters told me their families never claimed this heritage growing up. After hearing her sisters' stories, Cruz checked with White Mountain Apache authorities to see if she or anyone in her family were members of the tribe. She says no enrollment records were found. So it looks like we have another case of someone pretending to be a race or a ethnic group that they are not actually a part of. Remember, you had this with Rachel Dolezal, for example, who became famous because of her being a white woman pretending to be a black woman for the longest period of time. By the way, all the articles and everything are going to be linked in the description box down below. And this is just the San Francisco Chronicle article. If you actually go to Jacqueline Keeler's Substack page, she has a whole write-up on this where she puts all the documents in place. You can see it right here. I mean, she's just got documents all over the place, newspaper clippings, obituaries, war registration cards, and even census records, which if we scroll down, I'll give you an example. 1900 U.S. Census. Cruz family, her grandpa George Cruz's family, he is listed as Jorge Cruz. Her great-grandfather, Wenceslao/Benceslao Cruz, born in Mexico, as are his parents and his wife's parents, is identified as a farmer and as a renter. If he was a citizen of a nearby native nation, it would be more likely he would have and could have obtained land to farm through his tribe. How families obtain land title is often a big clue as to how they identify. Very few families, even with tenuous or non-existent ties, passed up the opportunity to obtain free land. Once again, the entire family identifies as white, as does everyone in their neighborhood. And again, there's just countless records in this Substack article. I recommend checking it out if you're interested. Now, people have wondered, how did Sacheen Littlefeather even come to know Marlon Brando? How did she become known for this Native American thing, etc.? Because Marlon Brando got involved in Native American issues, and how did she get into contact? All this stuff. Well, one of the claims is that it was through her activism in Alcatraz. There was a time period in the late 60s, early 70s, where Native Americans took over the island of Alcatraz in the San Francisco Bay. This lasted for about 18 to 19 months. And Sacheen always claimed that she was on the island, she was a part of this occupation, but the article says otherwise. Furthermore, Littlefeather was never at Alcatraz, Lanata Warjack told me in an interview. The longtime Shoshone activist and Bay Area resident would know. As the president of the Native American Student Organization at UC Berkeley in 1968, she was one of the student leaders at Alcatraz. She lived on the island for the entire occupation spanning 18 months. We never really knew her until the Oscar night, Warjack said. We thought that was really cool. That same year, she did a spread in Playboy magazine. We knew no Native would do that, especially during the 70s. The last thing we as Native women wanted anyone to think of us was as sex objects. I won't be putting the Playboy images up here for obvious reasons, but it really did seem like this was a woman who was after the fame. She was trying to be an actress herself. In fact, before her Oscar appearance, she actually was filming for a different film where you can see her role here, getting her ass spanked by a police officer. Gee, I wonder what drew Marlon Brando to her. The Alcatraz claim is in dispute, of course. Later on in life, in the 90s, there was an interview where she talked about how, oh, well, she didn't stay for the whole occupation or anything. She got there kind of late. And even though she got there late, she also didn't stay throughout the whole thing once she got there. She kind of would visit from time to time.
I came and went. I was a come and go on the island. As I stated, I was a full-time student at the college, and it did not give me an opportunity to be here full-time. But I came over on weekends and visited with my friends and other friends who are over here in the island for special celebrations or whatever. And I slept in one of the cells up there on the cement floor. And my back still has memories of that cement floor. And of course, we were very young in those days, so we just had a sleeping bag and we put it down, and we didn't know things about mattresses and, hey, this is going to be uncomfortable, it might be a little cold and all of that. So we were kind of very adventurous. A lot of us came over here without any real warm clothing, just wearing what we had at the time. Someone said, hey, come on the Clearwater. That was the boat that transported people back and forth at the time. And we'd just go over, just spontaneously. Without any planning, more or less.
So there you can see from the clip, to the extent that she went to the island, if at all, it was only very briefly, just to visit spontaneously with friends or whatever. She wasn't actually a part of the occupation long term like many of the other serious people. So this brings up a lot of questions. The first of which is why? Why claim Native American ancestry? And I think one of the places to look is her mental health. Sacheen freely admits that she is mentally ill. She's literally a schizo.
I am diagnosed correctly as schizoaffective bipolar. And I've been taking medication under a psychiatrist for the past 35 years. And I see my psychiatrist once every 2 weeks. And I take blood tests regularly for my medications, et cetera, and I encourage everybody who has a mental health or what we call a brain chemical imbalance to take the medication, because they're so sophisticated these days that people can function totally with proper help and get out of denial.
You also have her sister saying, you're not going to be a Mexican-American princess. Orlandi said of her sister's adoption of a fraudulent identity. You're going to be an American Indian princess. It was more prestigious to be an American Indian than it was to be Hispanic in her mind. Also, the claims of her identity being a fraud are not new. It's just that this is probably the most extensive evidence we've ever seen that her identity is completely fraudulent. If you go to Sacheen's own website, which is still up today, you can see it say this. Contrary to misinformation which has been published on the internet, Sacheen Littlefeather is indeed of true Native American Indian descent. Sacheen was born Marie Cruz in Salinas, California. Her mother is French, German, Dutch, and her father was from the White Mountain Apache and Yaqui tribes from Arizona. Cruz is her father's recognized tribe name. Sacheen took the name Sacheen Littlefeather after high school to reflect her natural heritage. She is not a Mexican actress, as Roger Ebert incorrectly reported. Miss Sacheen Cruz Littlefeather has been very active in the Native American Bay Area community. She was one of the original occupiers on Alcatraz Island to protest civil rights violations against the Indian people, which that's also incorrect. Once again, we talked about the Alcatraz thing. Even to Sacheen's own admission, she didn't get there until late 70 or 71.
Let's go back a quarter century to 1969 with the Indian occupation of Alcatraz Island. When did you come to the island?
I came to the island in late 70s, 71. And I was a student, Indian student in the Bay Area. I was a student of Adam Nordwall. He wrote the book, Alcatraz, Alcatraz.
Now, the individual she mentioned, Adam Nordwall, the person she said was like her teacher or whatever, you can see him quoted in this Santa Cruz Sentinel article from 1973. This was after her Oscar moment, where Adam says that Marie supported that Indian protest action and adopted the name Sacheen Littlefeather. So he doesn't say that she was actually at Alcatraz or anything like that. He said she supported the protest action, but we have no confirmation if she was actually there or not. And again, if you look at the actual dates of the occupation of Alcatraz, November 20th, 1969 to June 11th, 1971, would not be one of the original occupiers if she said she got there late 70, 71, especially if she's talking about only visiting from time to time, not really staying long because she had a lot of units and she was in college or whatever. Now, this claim on our website is actually not a response to this most recent article. If you look at archived versions of the website, here's an example of the website from 2006. It's exactly the same. This is because claims about her Native American ancestry have been questioned for a long time. Now, the other question that comes to mind is, well, why now? Why wait until after she's dead, where she can't defend herself? She can't say, hey, here's where you're wrong. I actually am Native American. You know, she could confront her sisters and say that, you know, they're lying for X, Y, and Z reason. Why wait until after she's dead? Well, I can't speak to why they didn't do so almost immediately after this whole Oscar thing happened. But in later years, I would imagine it's because, well, Sacheen's already getting pretty old, and she's also been sick for a very long time. In the New York Times article, you can see where it says, last year, Miss Littlefeather confirmed on Facebook that she had breast cancer, stage 4 terminal, that had spread to a lung. So obviously the cancer had been there for a long time before that. She's had problems for a long time before that. And I can't imagine that her sisters in good conscience would want to bring the entirety of the public against their sister who's now suffering and battling cancer in her old age. Also, it was only about 2 months before her death where the Academy made the announcement that they were apologizing to her. So that was a big deal, and that's when she really came back into the news. And a lot of these old questions about her identity and things like that were reignited. And of course, this journalist was also doing a series on fake pretend Indians. So it all kind of coincided pretty neatly together. So that's the end of the video. Did you guys enjoy it? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. Support us at nuancebro.com/join, and I'll see you next time, bro.